Okay, guy brought up a good point of derby tools, what to use and what to buy or whatever. First of all, my first set I started with was a 283-piece Craftsman set that had wrenches, ratchets from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. It had metric, both metric and standard sockets and wrenches. It's on sale now for $2.99. I think that's what I paid. It's normally like $3.99. But that's not necessarily what you need to start with. It's just a good idea to check prices. Harbor Freight, they're cheap wrenches. The mid-grade are okay. When you get to the super cheap wrenches, you'll notice a lot of times that the 1/2 inch ain't quite a 1/2 inch, or the 13 ain't quite a 1/2 inch. But either way, you'll need, don't necessarily need 1/4 inch stuff. It tends to break more, so 3/8 ratchet set, 1/2 inch ratchet set maybe for larger stuff, just gives you more. If the ratchet's longer, gives you more leverage. Plus, you can use a breaker bar. And even if you buy a set like I did, it's not going to come with vice grips. Vice grips are very important for getting off stripped hydraulic lines or tranny lines, or even brake lines when the nuts get ground off from using the wrong tools. I buy a big roll of wire and wire with brand new stuff. You can use the stuff in the car, but it's really old, and there's a good chance, it's got shorts or breaks, or just isn't that great. Sheet metal screws or drywall screws are always good to have for just attaching cover panels and that. Getting older cars, a dual meter is nice to have. Chryslers, I don't like their lean burn system, and I don't even actually like their electronic ignition. It seems like when you hit something, the car dies and stops. And the cheapest way to convert a lean burn computer controlled Chrysler motor is just go to AutoZone or Checker or whatever your local auto parts store is and buy an early model points distributor that comes with the points and everything. You'll need that to set the dwell, but anyways, it's a lot simpler. Just 2 wire hookups, standard coil. 4.5 inch angle grinder is also good for doing grinding, time point. But anyways, the angle grinder is good for, you can stick a cutoff wheel and cut with it, and also grind your welds and run wire wheels and different sanding discs on it. That's something else it's kind of really important to have. You can buy stuff like cordless drills for taking cars apart faster or zipping the screws in faster. The only problem is I hate charging that thing, so typically don't use it. Plus I have the air compressor. You don't need a toolbox like this. This is left over from being a body man, and once you buy tools, you're never going to get what you paid for them out of them, so they're always more valuable to you. But these aren't necessarily, all these tools are inside, and these are used for other purposes now, because now what I've done is, and it's probably your best bet, is start hitting swap meets, parking, yard sales and everything, and just picking up whatever. You'll find better quality wrenches for cheaper. Also, like when you buy a car, it's best to maybe sometimes use a screwdriver, dig down in here and the crevices, and a lot of times you find tools. The car I'm working on now, the only thing I found was a hammer, but still, it's a free hammer. So now that's a Craftsman angle grinder. The other tip is, another reason I was saying check prices, don't always go to Harbor Freight thinking that they're cheapest if you have access to Harbor Freight. I'm going to have to buy a new grinder, and what I noticed is if you go to Home Depot and ignore all the stuff that's displayed, go to where the angle grinders are, look on the bottom shelf, because they have an angle grinder there that's like less than $15 or less than $20. And you'll go to Harbor Freight and spend the same money for one like that, one that's hiding there because it's already broke. Sometimes they'll come with extra brushes and they're worth buying, but a lot of times the bearing plates on the bottom are plastic, so the heat of grinding destroys them. So watch out for plastic stuff. I don't understand why they put a lot of plastic in something that's going to be used on grinding metal. But anyway, like I said, don't have to spend a lot of money on that. Check around. If you got internet, it's even better. They won't always show the good deals on there, but if you got nothing better to do and you're down at Home Depot and Lowe's, like I said, look on the bottom shelves sometimes for the stuff that necessarily isn't that popular. Also, you can come across buckets, save those. as you'll notice as I'm working on that car, I'll like take the nuts and bolts and whatever I might be taking off and never use again, I still set them in the core support. Then when I'm done, I'll take them and I'll throw everything in this bucket for a million reasons. Derby cars aren't that specific. Whatever nut and bolt you can get, who cares? You know, if you're bolting a fender together, use a metric bolt. Who cares? It's gonna be in there once, and you can let it go with the car. I don't know necessary. Plus, that's one thing. You don't want to go back and like put money in nuts and bolts. You don't have to go back and try and salvage everything out of your derby car. Like I said, then when you go to strip it, if you're saving springs and that, save all the suspension bolts. Sometimes they're quite unique and for control arms and that, and throw them in the bucket and keep it. Keep doing that. Sooner or later, you won't even need to buy nuts and bolts anymore. You'll have enough supply. Same thing with any chains you find. It's all valuable stuff. I'm one of those weirdos that you'll see me, most people around picking up pennies or quarters. If I see a washer, put it in my pocket, I bring it home. But anyways, that's basic on tools. Then of course you're going to need regular hammers, big sledgehammer, smaller sledgehammers for bending and forming metal. But for the first time derby guy, you know, regular set of hand tools is a must. Ratchets are nice, of course screwdrivers, vice grips for getting stuff that's stuck on off, and stuff like that. And you can use claw hammers until you can get I like using ball peen hammers for. You'll see videos of guys forming metal and creasing cars with these. So something to think about later. But for the first time guy, just a regular set of hand tools is fine. And like I started to say, what I also do is like, whenever I buy something new to replace something that maybe came across better, I throw it. It's not in here; it's in the truck. But I throw everything into the derby specific toolbox. That way, if it gets lost or stolen, and isn't big a deal as taking your brand new Craftsman tools to the derby and something happening. So that's about it. I have all sorts of insane stuff like torque pit sockets for removing seat belts. You don't need it. If you're not using the seat belts, and you're not using the seat belts that go in the car, and you don't need the bolts, just cut them out with a razor blade. That's another thing. Get yourself a good razor blade and a long pair of wire cutters. Don't even bother unplugging all the wires in the car if it's attached to a chassis. Plus, your copper when you're stripping out of the car is worth more if it's clean. Doesn't have steel ends on it. It's a little less for if it's got shielding on it. Don't worry about that either, but just cut it in more manageable sections. And I have a 55-gallon old plastic garbage can. I keep everything. You also need specific funnels for, you'll find it to be a bear to get the training fluid in. Something like this is okay. This is more for oil, but they have these ones that are long and skinny that are sometimes a firewall interferes with putting training fluid in it. And I don't have it in here, but big crescent wrenches come in handy for tightening down all thread when you get to it. There are some specific derby tools that you can actually look up. I already have on my YouTube page. You can go under and come across. Cutting torches aren't necessary for your first derby. It's nice to have. Maybe if you're lucky, somebody will loan them to you. There's a small set over there. I got the big set that I use here. It has 100 feet of hose, tangled up with 100 feet of air hose right now. But anyways, yeah, I got mine used for $100, which was a screaming deal since the tanks alone were worth over $100 when I traded them in to get new tanks and some more specific stuff. I will suggest the Harbor Freight cutting torch if you want to build your own, and you can buy the tanks. The $99 one that goes on sale is actually pretty decent. In fact, that is what's on the big welding tank system right now. The big welding tank is running the Harbor Freight stuff. The small one is actually running the Victor. Because there's the thing, the Victor one actually, the acetylene gauge when I first bought it brand new exploded on me when I turned the tank on. No one could figure it out. Victor was nice about it. They asked for it back to inspect it, but they couldn't figure out why, what happened. They think maybe it was a bad gauge and allowed the pressure to go too high. But anyways, yeah, as soon as I cracked it, didn't even turn the screws in, and the damn thing exploded. Lucky nothing happened, but I was able to shut the valve off really fast. But that is why now I've switched to propane. Propane is not as violent as acetylene. Propane actually is harder to burn at high pressures, where the opposite is when acetylene gets over 15 pounds. It becomes instantly explosive. It doesn't need a spark. It will just ignite itself. Also, when you're out searching for parts, or you find parts, like I got extra distributors, just take everything for the beginning. If it's free, cheap, it's scrap material, so just take it. Even differentials, parts like that, those gears might work, take it. Remember, everything that can't be used but is free is also scrap material you can later take to the scrap yard. So there you go, basically. You know, like I said, you can buy stuff at Craftsman, it's good stuff, or you just start collecting random stuff. If you're running older cars, you only need standard wrenches, but nowadays all cars are metric. And then if you're working on the 77, 79 era ones, they're metric and standard, so you need both. And I do suggest not, skimping on that, or trying just to use, because if you start stripping off bolts because you're trying to make, oh, this wrench is close enough, you're going to give yourself more headaches. So it's just better to start with what you need. There you go. Somebody asked a suggestion on where I get my derby tools and what to use. Like I said, I buy good stuff, comes in the shop, then when I replace some stuff, that stuff now goes to the derby car pile of tools. There you go, and I'll see you soon.